Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at all of the best captaincy options ahead of FPL Gameweek 3. Welcome back to another video on my channel. Today, we are going to be looking at all of the best captaincy options, in my opinion, ahead of Gameweek 3. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and hit subscribe to the channel, especially if you want to see any more of the future content. This is a weekly recurring series, and throughout the season, we're going to see just how well my captaincy picks have been doing. So fingers crossed we get off to a decent enough start in the opening few game weeks. All of the data on the right hand side, all of the projection model data is from Solio Analytics. It's completely free to use for the first, I think, 2 months. They're extending that in September. So if you wanted to give that a go, there is a link in the description below. Not sponsored, I just really like the tool. In the meantime, let's have a look at the best captaincy options. This is ranked by expected points, but also with a little bit of my opinion input into it as well. Now, this week is, again, a very close call with a lot of different options that you could easily go for that might not even rank on here. So if you've got a other option that you like the look of that isn't in the top 7 or 8 on the screen now, then that's absolutely fine. Feel free to drop a comment below. We can have a chat about it if you like. But I think these are covering off most of the popular options. To start off with, let's talk about Man United. At home to Burnley, it is probably the plum fixture this week. You would expect that they do fairly well against a promoted side at home at Old Trafford, and they have looked a bit better this season than last. It is worth noting they've still only scored 1 goal in the league in the first 2 games, but that was against Arsenal and Fulham. And whilst Fulham aren't typically seen as an elite defence, the numbers actually suggest that they are right up there. I think they're about 5th for XGC last season, and this season, if you remove the penalty, they're in the top 5 for the defensive data as well. So Arsenal, Fulham, you might not expect them to get too many goals, too many opportunities in those matches, but they did create a fair bit. Now, the other thing to note is Burnley's defence in the Championship was very good, but will that cross-pollinate to the Premier League? It's too early to tell. We reckon it's probably going to drop off a little bit. I think that's fair to say. But are they going to be able to stand resolutely against Man United? Quite possibly. The market odds and the projection data, again from Solio, but baked in with live market data, suggests that of all of the games, of all of the teams this week, Man United are projected to get the most goals on average. So 2.25, but that is actually fairly low for a high scoring team this week. Most weeks you'd see at least 1 or 2 teams hitting 2.5, maybe up to 3 as well. So 2.25 is actually on the lower side. It is still the best out of all of the 20 clubs this week though. So if you wanted to go for the high upside of a fixture where you're expecting a few more goals for one team, Man United might be the way to go. Now, moving past the teams themselves, let's look at the players. I think there are 3 standout options for captaincy for Man United, and there's not really much splitting them. It comes down to your personal preference as an FPL manager. Bruno Fernandes, Cunha and Mbeumo. Now, neither of them have gotten any proper points so far this season, but we know what they are capable of from seasons past. Each of them have slightly different benefits as well. So Bruno Fernandes, we know he's sitting a little bit deeper, but he's good on the defensive contributions, and that can give him that little bit of a raised floor over the others. He also historically has had penalties. I am maybe 10% worried he gives them up, and obviously Cunha and Mbeumo, even Sesko, could go and take penalties from him, but I still think that he's likely to continue. He's actually got a very good record of about 91% conversion rate, which is well above the average. I'd be surprised if he gave away penalties just yet. And against Burnley, because they'll probably be low blocking against Man United, Bruno Fernandes should have a bit more license to get forward and get in and around the box, and probably be in that range where he'll get a few pop shots away from around the edge of the box. So I do like him a lot as a captaincy option. The model suggests that he is expected the highest points ahead of Game Week 3. There's not much in it. There's less than a point between him and the top 3. So I don't think it's a standout option, but I do still like him. Now, moving down, we've got Cunha and Mbeumo. Again, there's not much splitting any of the options, but especially these 2, both 8 million. Most people don't own either of them at the moment, so looking to buy. I think if I was looking to buy and captain right now, Cunha's the one that looks like he's got more open play goal threat and just looks a little bit more likely to start converting sooner rather than later. That is a very subjective point, very eye testy. So if you're backing the data, there's really not much to split the two. And Mbeumo is on set pieces from one side, so corners from one side. And obviously nearly got the assist for the Euro goal in game week 2. I think it ended up as an own goal, but near enough. And his corners are very, very good quality. He's still got decent goal threat himself as well. It just seems like Cunha, and the data suggests this as well, by the way, is slightly ahead on the open play goal threat at the moment. If I was picking one for captaincy out of those two, I think I'd probably go with Cunha, but Mbeumo is a fair enough differential shout as well. And Bruno Fernandes, I would say, for me, just slightly edges out either of them because he's got the other routes to points, the penalties potentially, and of course the defensive contributions. As frustrating as he is as an FPL asset, when you've got all of those different ways of scoring points and he's going to stay on the pitch for 90 minutes, that is enough to give him the edge over a lot of other options that don't have penalties, don't necessarily get 90 minutes, although Cunha and Mbeumo are fairly likely to get very good minutes as well. One quick note on Bruno Fernandes before we move on. I would maybe hold off on making transfers just yet if you don't have him already. I do, so I'm not too fussed. But there are a couple of whispers circulating around a Saudi bid coming in for him. If that happens, then the last thing you want is to be moving on him early and then having to move him out before the deadline. I think it is very, very unlikely that that happens. But considering he's not going to rise or fall in price anytime soon, by the looks of it anyway, I'd probably just wait until after the Grimsby game, not after the deadline because it's still open come game week 3, but as close to the deadline as you can, just to make sure. And it's, again, like a 1% chance, but just to advocate for patience and advocate for caution there. Moving away from Man United, Haaland is another standout option for me this week. Brighton away from home. He's got a decent record against Brighton. I think he scored in the last 3 in a row. It might even stretch further back than that. And the XG per 90 for the season so far is much, much better than anyone else on this spreadsheet. Also, the team goal projection isn't that far behind Man United. 2 expected goals away at Brighton. And again, a bit of a subjective point, but I think the matchup is quite nice. Brighton do come out and play good football. They pass out from the back. They're not going to low block City. And there should be spaces in behind for Haaland. So again, Brighton have been inconsistent defensively for a couple of seasons now. The data sometimes looks very good, but then they just capitulate in other weeks. I get a feeling that Man City could have a lot of fun in this fixture. I think I said that this time last season, though, and Brighton might have won like 2-1, 2-0. So it doesn't always work out that way. But there is something about this fixture away from home where Brighton are undoubtedly going to have to come out and play against City. I think Haaland is going to get a few big chances here. So I really like him as an option. And if I had him, he would be right up there alongside the Man United picks for captaincy. Salah is never a bad captain. Obviously, Arsenal at home is not a perfect fixture. And if you're ever going to look away from Salah, even the most stubborn auto cap Salah managers are going to be tempted to look away this week because Arsenal are a very, very good defence, probably the best in the league, and certainly has looked that way over the last few seasons, and have started off with 2 clean sheets back to back as well. So it's not going to be easy for Salah, and he has looked a little bit wide, a little bit isolated, not as involved in the build-up play and the end product as we might have expected at the start of the season, but it's still Mo Salah and I expect him to come good. So he's never a bad option. I just think that this week of all weeks against Arsenal, there are opportunities elsewhere to go differential and maybe have a little bit more fun with it, which is a weird thing to say in quite a objective video, but there are opportunities throughout the season to go against Salah. Not many if you are pretty stubborn on going with Salah most game weeks. But this week is one of those where I think there are opportunities across the field. You can look at Haaland if you've got him too. You can look at the Man United options. And there are a few other differentials I do quite like as well. So moving on to those differentials, I've included 3 at the bottom here, all up front in FPL. So Watkins, Wood and João Pedro. Watkins is an interesting one because he hasn't actually done anything of note in FPL this season so far. And I think it would be very weird for anyone to be looking at captaining him this week, considering the form. But the market odds and the data suggests that he's actually expected to do just as well as a Chris Wood or a João Pedro. So I've included him here just as a point of interest to say that maybe 2 game weeks worth of data isn't enough to make an accurate judgment on him. And he is still a very good elite level Premier League striker. Emery's also a very good manager. So I think it's a matter of time before they start scoring goals. I don't actually love the Crystal Palace fixture, though, to be honest. And we don't know for certain that he's on penalties either. So I've included him more as a point of interest that he is matching the likes of Chris Wood and João Pedro, despite the fixture, despite the form as well. So just more of an interesting one. I personally probably wouldn't have him towards the top of my captaincy matrix myself. After that, we've got Chris Wood and João Pedro. I think João Pedro becomes a much better option and actually a very good option if we hear news that Palmer is definitely out. I think when João Pedro drops into that number 10 role and gets more solid expected minutes as well without Palmer in the side, he becomes a very good option, as we saw in game week 2. I don't expect him to get 3 returns every week. I think that was more of a one-off situation against West Ham, who were there for the taking. And Fulham are not an easy defence to break down. I've already mentioned it earlier on, and they're going to be resolute against Chelsea. It's a bit of a London derby as well. So I don't expect Chelsea to have it all their own way. But if we take a look at the box ticking exercises I usually do on these videos, João Pedro does hit a lot of those boxes, or check a lot of those boxes, if Palmer isn't playing. And that is very much in doubt at time of recording. If he's not playing, then like I said, Pedro probably moves into the 10. Delap plays ahead of him in the 9. That's absolutely fine. I like João Pedro in the 10 anyway. And his minutes are more secure because you don't have to compete with a Delap or an Esteval because you can play both of them in the same lineup and not have to worry about taking João Pedro off in the 70th, 80th minute, where in the past, if Palmer's also playing, then João Pedro is more likely to be the one that comes off in that first batch of subs for a Delap or an Esteval, or again, there are a few other options at Chelsea that could come on the pitch. So if Palmer's out, I really like João Pedro. If Palmer is fit or looks likely to be involved in some way, then I think João Pedro's minutes take a little bit of a dive, and it's less likely that he has penalties as well. Obviously, if Palmer's on the pitch, he'll take them. But if Palmer's not on the pitch, João Pedro has as good a chance as anyone for taking the next penalty. So you might have a cheap enough striker on penalties and getting 90 minutes in his favoured position if Palmer isn't playing. So don't discount him. It's not a great fixture, but he does tick a lot of those boxes, the minutes, the penalties, the position, for a player I would be comfortable capping if Palmer isn't playing. If Palmer is playing, then he's on this matrix as well, and he looks pretty decent as an option for all of the reasons that I just mentioned with João Pedro. But again, compared to maybe the Man United assets, compared to Haaland as well, maybe there's better options elsewhere, potentially, considering Palmer's minutes, even if he does play, quite likely to be managed considering the injury, and it is pretty unlikely he even plays in the first place at time of recording. Finally, Chris Wood, I think he's again a very nice differential shout. West Ham really do look there for the taking right now, at home as well. Nottingham Forest have been surprisingly decent in front of goal, considering the pre-season they had where I think they scored 1 in 7. They've actually looked pretty good in the first 2 game weeks for the attacking threat. And Chris Wood's XG per 90 is much better than we normally saw it last season, where he scored 20 Premier League goals. At 0.63 XG per 90, that's actually very strong for any striker, let alone Chris Wood, who usually is working off of a lot lower than that. So again, I really like him on penalties, decent minutes at the moment. I think longer term, his minutes might be a little bit more in question with the signings they've made with Europe, but that doesn't impact him in game week 3 when we could be looking at captaining him. So I do really like him against West Ham, mainly for the fixture, because West Ham just don't look like they have a system that works for them right now. And they are leaking goals at an alarming rate. Even in the Carabao Cup last night, they conceded 3 to Wolves. So I think that fixture is one that you could be looking to target as well. Okay, so on to my personal captaincy rankings ahead of game week 3. We do this every week, and I'm playing a little game against myself throughout the season to see how successful I am. I do get to pick from any captain, so it's not just in my personal team. If it was, then that would be a little bit boring and it'd be a bit more limited. So this week, I'm going with Erling Haaland up top. I don't have him in my personal FPL side. I am jealous of that. And I genuinely believe that he is marginally, very, very marginally better than any of the Man United assets for this game week. I really like the matchup against Brighton. I think if you've got him, he's a very good captaincy option. And he's actually still fairly differential, all things considered. For the quality of the team he's playing in, for the quality of the player, for the matchup, all of that good stuff, I think he ticks all of the boxes, and I do really like him as a captaincy option. So he does take first position for me, and he's the one that I'll be judged on for the hit rate and the returns so far. Fernandes is very slightly behind. He actually does come out ahead of Haaland for the expected points this week because of his different avenues. Obviously, he's got the DEFCON and the extra point for the goal, extra point for the clean sheet. All of that does come into the thinking when the expected points are taken into account. But from what we've seen so far, he's not getting as many shots away. He's not as involved in the final third. And that is just maybe putting him slightly behind Erling Haaland, who I think will have a couple of big chances against Brighton. I think the matchup benefits the style in which City want to play this season, and Haaland getting in behind is likely to occur at least once or twice. So that's the reason that I've ranked it that way, but there's really not much splitting it. And if you don't have Haaland, like a lot of managers don't, 70% of the game, including myself, don't right now, I think Man United options are absolutely viable. And I've currently got my armband on Bruno Fernandes and feel very comfortable doing so, by the way. I don't think he's a bad option by any means. I just think Haaland might be slightly ahead of him in my own personal opinion. I've also put Chris Wood as number 3. I could have put another Man United option there, but I think Chris Wood, having the penalties, decent minutes at the moment, and that fixture, like I said in the first section, it does seem like West Ham are there for the taking, and Forest could have a lot of fun at home to them in game week 3. So that is my ranking. 1, 2, 3, Haaland, Fernandes, Wood. But the other Man United options are still good. And of course, Salah is never a bad option either. Not much splitting it. So do always go with your gut. This is just my personal opinion. But do let me know what your personal opinion is for best captain ahead of game week 3 in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, please do leave a like and hit subscribe as well, so you don't miss out on any future content. And of course, tune in tomorrow for my team selection video ahead of game week 3.